Welcome to Nimble Minds, Talks of Self and Spirituality, where we talk about different spiritual concepts as well as different philosophies and perspectives. So, today, the book that I have here is called Papers in African Psychology, and it is by Naeem Akbar. So, uh, obviously, the paper is on psychology, and I'm not too far into the book, but so far reading, there are different points that have stood out to me, and I want to go ahead and share that with you guys now. So, I'm going to go ahead and read this off the page. It says, and this is talking about viewing the African reality or black, however you want to classify it, but viewing the African reality from a perspective. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it. So, these tendencies have led us to conclude that if one accepts Euro American assumptions about African reality, then the questions and answers about black people are going to be in a predetermined manner in response to Euro American reality. So, what is that saying? Simply put, that means that if you're a person, right, whether you're African or not, but this is geared toward people who are African, you're black, you have that melanin. If you are that person and you are viewing history that has to do with Africa, that has to do with if you're black in America, that has to do with you, but you're viewing it from that American perspective. And I'm using that American word as a blanket term to just say European, as that Euro American, right? If you're viewing it from that perspective, it's just saying that all your assumptions about that are going to be biased in that viewpoint naturally. Because let's give some examples. Let's say you grew up here and you go through the school system and you just haven't decided to go maybe talk to some family or pick up a book from a library to read about history that pertains to, people who are African or black, right? That means you're going to be getting all your knowledge, all your resources from the school systems. And while maybe there are places that will give you that knowledge, there are going to be a lot of times that bias of that Euro American viewpoint. So, for example, when we talk about different things in history, we can talk about maybe the different holidays, right? Different holidays you may celebrate, or that be Thanksgiving or Christmas, right? Or just the reality of the African experience in America as history has said it to be, not as I say it to be, not as my emotions say it to be, but as history and how time has said it to be is what we go off of. So what does that mean? That means you deal with the reality that there was a lot of murder that went on. That's not a great thing, but it's just the reality. A lot of murder, a lot of lying, a lot of deceit that went on when, Europeans came to America and conquered the land, whether that being, and this is part of history, whether that being them, getting to the chiefs and, using different substances, whether that be alcohol, and maybe not even the substances, but different tactics of deception, whether that be coercion, whether that being their ability to take advantage of a very giving and kind nature of the people who are willing to help and assist, only for them to later on turn their backs and, slain, their families and their children and their kids, and tend to have that, be practice into the future. That's what history has shown us. So that's a perspective you may not saying that, you'll never, if you never, but that's just a perspective you're less likely to come upon if you're steady viewing the African reality, as it says in this book, the Black American reality in this book, from a lens of just straight America without any other input from maybe different readings or different books and maybe talking to people. Okay, so let's keep going. So hence, one can see that by nature of the underlying assumptions characteristic of Euro-American research on the Negro self-concept, the range results were predetermined and consistent with the questions and assumptions. Thus, if you can accept the Euro-American assumptions and questions, you must also accept the answers or results characteristics of the Negro self-concept literature. Okay. So that's just going back and confirming what I was saying, that if you're only accepting it from that perspective, that means the assumptions about the characteristics, the culture, and the values of black people, black Americans, African people is going to only be through that lens, and therefore it's going to confirm itself because you just haven't read different pieces of literature to maybe get a different perspective on the thing. So you grow up in that American society, that Eurocentric society through the school system, but then you don't read any other books to start to get yourself to ask yourself different questions that would allow you to get that perspective. That's all it's saying. So you just limit yourself. That's what it's saying there. So now it says, however valuable such an exercise might be, it is not our intent to explain why or how Euro researchers have created pseudo reality of negative Negro self-concept. Our intention is rather to suggest some reasons for considering an alternative framework or perspective understanding African black people's conception of themselves. So we come back here to this pseudo reality of negative Negro self-concept. So when it talks about this, right, and this is that philosophy spiritual channel. We're more on the philosophy, the psychology, we're more on that side right now. So what are different ways that this pseudo reality, this, not true reality, or not 100% true reality, I'll say, of a negative Negro self-concept, what does that mean? First, let's break down self-concept. It's how you view yourself. What is the concept you have of yourself? What do you think about yourself? Do you think you're a person who is ambitious? You can go after it, even if you fail, even if whatever it is, even if it's difficult, you'll give it what you got until you can't? Or do you have that concept of you hate yourself, life sucks? What's the concept that you have? That's what it's talking about. So now, negative Negro self-concept. So now the black concept, African self-concept, that's negative. So what is that? Well, we can see the different ways that this can be pushed, and it's simple. You see it every day on the TV, or maybe if it's some music you listen to. That's everybody, most people listen to some type of music. And when it comes to, the different genres that are popular, when it comes to hip hop, on the, African side, the black side that's being represented, you see a lot of negative concepts that are being promoted. For example, you see the stealing. You see the glorification of the stealing. You see the glorification of murder. You see the glorification of these negative things that, however you want to classify it, are just wrong. If you want to go off of it for more, if you're religious, it's sin. If you want to go from just, a spiritual concept, a more grounded concept, it's just off balance. It's not in alignment with nature, but these are the things that are being promoted and glorified. So once again, you have different artists, all right, and I'm sure you guys know different artists that you listen to that may promote the, you need to have all these women, you need to have all this money, you need to have all this drugs, you need to have all these weapons, you need to, be flaunting and, stepping over the next man. And the negative part that really is detrimental to the self-concept of the Negro, if you want to call it that, the black person, the African, the melanated brother, the brethren, whatever you want to say, is negative about that, is that not only is it promoting this message, which in itself is not positive, right? That's not something that's constructive. It's also promoting this message against other people that would look like yourself. So if you're black, if you're African, 9 times out of 10, the music you're listening to is about that person promoting this negative talk on other people that look like them. That's what makes it so negative. That's what makes it so negative. So when you're talking about these things, murdering, killing, taking this person's girl, robbing, whatever it is, 9 times out of 10 in the music video, in the song, there is being portrayed and presented as them doing these actions against someone who looks like themselves, which helps to promote the negative self-concept even more. Because then you have people who will recite these things unconsciously, maybe even consciously, because let's be honest, the beat might be catchy. The lyrics, the way that it's structured, it's catchy. It has a rhythm to it, but that does not make it good. So then you have people that are reciting these things and further ingraining it into their subconscious, helping to promote and to push the negative Negro self-concept. Okay, so now, so far we've already discussed how you can have that Euro American bias towards the African reality if you have not tried to step out the boundaries and read other books that may be, just differing from your perspective. As simple as that. It may just be something different, right? And then now we can see how, with this, it also promotes a pseudo reality of negativity for the African, for the black person. Okay, so now we're past that. So now there's more reading here. African self-concept, the extended self. Okay, I'll read this. This part is good too. So, African self-concept, the extended self. I'm skipping a couple lines, but it says, if one were to epitomize African psychology, it would be best described as the philosophy of rhythm or harmony. So, once again, this connects to that negative Negro self-concept and the relation to the music. As black, as African, we all know, hey, we have rhythm. We're able to connect. We're able to, dance and come up with things that are catchy, that are trending, that become, the trends. And this is what can make it negative, because naturally we're able to catch rhythm. Naturally, we should be in harmony with nature, just the natural balance of life, the world, the universe. So when you mix in this natural ability to connect with the negative Negro self-concept, which is just them promoting these, negative things into the society against people who look like themselves, which is the black person. So black on black, right? Or African on African, however you want to classify it. That's when it really gets dangerous, because now you have people who naturally we're good at the rhythm. Naturally, we can make things that are catchy, but now we're making things that are catchy but promote negativity. Let's keep going. So, the behavioral modalities, which are therefore characteristic of African lifestyles throughout the diaspora, are based on several philosophical assumptions and a conception of reality, which, when analyzed, reflects a sense of ontological harmony or rhythm. Yes. Related to this is an African philosophical orientations, which emphasizes the notion of interdependence. So now I'm going to go ahead and let's see if this is right here. Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit. I do want to touch on this. In fact, one could say that in a sense, African psychology does not allow for individuals. It recognizes rather that only in terms of one people's does the individual become conscious of one's own being. Okay, so what does this mean? So it's going back to that tribal mentality. And when I'm saying tribal mentality, I'm not talking about people wearing leaves. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about the type of mentality, tribal mentality, in terms of unity, in terms of family, if that's what you want to call it, but just the group. They just keep it like that, just the group. All right. So it's saying that this is not the natural state of African people in general, okay? It is saying that in the group, it allows the person to find themselves and allows for individuality. And the reason it says this is because in America, or in a more Eurocentric society, individualism or the individual being or individuality is being pushed. That's the normal. Be an individual, individuality, think for yourself. And yes, that is a positive thing. But here it's saying that it stems the ability to be able to think for yourself and to even become an individual. It stems from having the group initially. So while, yes, you can become an individual and it is good to start to think for yourself, to be able to develop your own opinions and to develop your own perspectives and outlooks on life so you can ultimately make the decision for how you want to live your life and end it, you have to have started, or at least there should be some impact of a family, of a group that helps you to interpret life. Okay. And it's saying that here, with the more Eurocentric view, it is not pushed like that. And it's saying that it's being pushed more towards a individualistic mentality. You're your own man. You don't need the group. You don't need the family, all that kind of things. Okay. And Eventually, it may get to a point like that, but for the base of just Africans, if you're black, the strength is in the group initially. That's where it starts, okay? So that's how you can start to cultivate yourself in the individual. You start with the family. May you end with it, maybe not, but you do start with it. And that's a very important part, because in starting with the group and other people, it allows the person to become the individual. That's what it's saying there. So when it comes to this, and this is just going to be a little point that I'm adding on. This is my own thinking here that I'm putting together after reading these, passages to you guys, is that this can be a negative, right? And I'm going to explain why it can be a positive and a negative, but we'll start with the negative first. So we just discussed, and this is the beginning, this is just the start, but we discussed how having that biased, right, of just the Euro-American perspective on the African, black, once again, whatever you want to call it, reality, is already detrimental. Then you pair that with the promotion of this negativity, i.e. the drugs that it always pushes, the weapons that you need to have on you at all times so you can take out somebody that looks just like you for no apparent reason other than to show your ego and I'm bigger than, which is just you projecting how small you really are. So instead of that, right, now you have the individual that comes in. So this is where it becomes a dangerous mixture, because now you have this negativity being pushed that's supposed to confuse you. It's supposed to confuse the African, the black person, so they don't know who they are. So they're out searching and they stumble upon a gun and they stumble upon some drugs and they stumble upon this type of mentality. So now you mix that with the individuality that this society pushes at all times. Just be an individual. Don't worry about the group or the group's ideas. So now you have a person who is easily influenced. That's what this creates. It creates a person who becomes easily influenced by the outside world, i.e. America and its ideas. And from just reading, I have personal experience. I can tell you, I've been a person who was listening to all that music, and not just listening to it, was trying to imitate that music, was trying to go out here and, act tough. And I'm not a tough guy, but, go out there and act tough for no reason, or I felt like I needed to have a gun to fill, what I'm saying, for whatever reason. But the thing is, these things do have an effect, okay? And then that's why it can be dangerous. That's why it can be negative. Because if you're an individual and you're not already, and you're starting at a place where you don't know who you are, but you're an individual, you become easily influenced. And I can tell you that it was thanks to a group, family, people around me that helped me to realize that, hey, maybe that's not the best and you should not be doing that, okay? But it starts with a group. A group can help you to do that. And then eventually you can go off and, read on your own and develop your own opinions. All right, that will come naturally. But you shouldn't have to start off being an individual, no assistance. You shouldn't have to start like that. So that's why it can be a negative. But now let's talk about some positives of becoming an individual, okay? We know that there's some negatives. What are the negatives? You can be easily influenced by the things you see on social media, whether that be, the gang banging, whether that be you need to tote guns, whether that be you need to sell this and that to make a stack, whatever it is, okay? Now let's talk about some positives that can come from this, okay? So now, let's say you have the individual once again. If you're able to start with a solid foundation, and that's going to be subjective, right? But when I say solid foundation, I mean just having people that care around you, right? That's a good thing, which I did have. So that is a good foundation. Now, if you have that around you, it is okay, because you may still be somewhat affected by this. You may go through that, just being a kid and being easily influenced by things. That's part of being a kid. That's natural. But you may still go through the negative Negro self-concept, negative African self-concept, where you are just seeing these negative images that you may not even realize how negative they are and how powerful they are, right? But they're negative, so you start to imitate that. But eventually, with the power of the group as well, their opinions. And then as you grow, if you are able to step outside that boundary, if you're able to start maybe reading, maybe now when you're on social media, you start searching for information that can be constructive, information that can help you, then you can begin to change. Now you can change your rhythm to not a rhythm of destruction, but a rhythm of harmony. Then you start getting that rhythm of harmony. So this is where it can be a positive in becoming that individual, okay? Because now you're able to form your own perspectives, and hopefully now you're reading some things that give you a more positive self-concept, that don't have you thinking you have to be a certain way in order to get this attention or attract this, when in all reality you have everything you need from the time you were born. Okay, so now you can just be yourself and you will attract things that you need. So you continue to search for that knowledge, to educate yourself about who you are, about your self-concept, to know that you need to have a positive self-concept no matter the outcome. Okay, so now you start to build yourself. Now you become an individual, a positive individual that recognizes the power of the group, but also the power of being able to stand alone without the group if necessary. So this is why this can be positive. Okay, so quick recap. We went over the issues with having a Eurocentric opinion of the African reality slash black reality. We went over how negative Negro slash black African self-concept is pushed. And we went over how being black African, you have a natural rhythm, a natural harmony with the earth, with the universe, with nature, and why that is a positive thing. Okay, and we also went over the concept of the group and understanding how the group can positively impact that individual as well as negatively impact if the group also has that negative Negro self-concept. And then we went over why it becomes a positive thing to become an individual that is doing positive things that are constructive, like what? Reading, understanding your own history, understanding who you are, and understanding that you are fine just the way you are. Keep being yourself and it'll work out for you. So that's the video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.